Let's get our Hog and Hominy Chili working. First step, start sweating your mirepoix. I use what the Creoles and the Cajuns call Holy Trinity. That's onion, celery, green pepper. I'm gonna go in a skillet over low heat for now. Use a little bit of canola oil. Now the peppers in here are poblano. I think they got a whole lot more flavor than a standard green bell pepper. Last thing we're gonna do is get some garlic in here. I've found over the years that using the microplane to grate your garlic helps it melt down. And it's also a hell of a lot faster than trying to mince garlic. And we're gonna make a big old batch of chili, so I'm going with 6 cloves here. Okay, so let's talk pork. We're working with Berkshire pork. It is a heritage breed that is one of my favorites. It's the most common heritage breed pork that you're gonna run into, at least in the United States, and that's why I picked it. Other breeds like a Duroc and a Red Wattle are up there as some of my favorites as well. Harder to find. You really gotta have that farmer to chef connection. So if you go to your local butcher or your local market that carries good, organic, or even just sustainable, humane hog, and you're getting pork from them, most likely it's Berkshire. And what you'll find with Berkshire is they consider it to be somewhat like the Wagyu of pork, which is kind of funny because I feel like cattle should be the pork of meat or something like that. So what I really love about Berkshire hog is that it's got a firm, plump flesh quality, and then the marbling is really insane. I mean, when you look at this belly and you just see the thick strips of fat and marbling throughout the flesh, it's just really clean, good eating pork. So we're gonna take our belly and we're just gonna cut it into some big chunks here. And we do want the belly to be identifiable in our chili. We do want to have a nice big chunk of belly in our mouth and bite through that and go, hey, that's belly. So don't go too small here. And as the mirepoix, or the Holy Trinity, starts to sweat, this belly's going to render out, and we'll be cooking in some delicious Berkshire pork fat. And now's a good time to just start seasoning. We just want to season in layers. And when I say season, I'm just talking about some good kosher salt. Okay, so now let's get to the shoulder. We're gonna do 2 things with the shoulder. One, we're gonna dice it up into large chunks so that we have this braised, chunky, meaty, like studded, glorious chili. And then 2 is we're gonna make chorizo sausage and then add that to the chili. So all in, we've got belly, shoulder, and chorizo. So I like to buy the pork shoulder. It's the best cut for making sausage. It's got a natural 70 to 30 lean to fat ratio. That's what we do at the restaurant, is we just grind up shoulder and it makes amazing sausage. And then it's also excellent for braising or stewing, which is what we're technically doing with the chili. So there's obviously more here than we need. We're gonna get what we want and be able to do much, much more. You find that ball and socket joint and just carve around it. And this is how you debone a pork shoulder. A nice, thin, flexible boning knife is so helpful. We're gonna just pull the skin off, save that for cracklings. And then dice this up for the sausage. Just needs to be about 1 to 1.5 inch size cubes for dicing. When you're making sausage, you want to move quick and keep your pork ice cold. That's going to help stabilize the emulsion. And also, everything that I'm doing, about to show you how to make this chorizo. This is, of course, my riff or version of a couple of guys I know's abuelas or abuelitas chorizo. So yeah, it's kind of Mexican granny style chorizo, and there's a few little things that I do differently in there, not to necessarily make it my own, but just to make sure that you can replicate it at home and make it tight. So, with that being said, sausage making is a formula. You gotta follow the formula if you want it to come out correct. First step, we're gonna do this. This recipe is for 1 pound of chorizo. So you're just gonna multiply this exactly if you want to scale it up. So 15.95 ounces. I'd say that's close enough. You can, the 0.05 ounces is okay. And we're gonna grind. This is one of the things that I really love about the KitchenAid, all the attachments that you can get for a very affordable price. And then the next step is we're gonna season and emulsify our chorizo. So 1 3/4 teaspoons of kosher salt. That's gotta be exact. You need the right amount of salinity. 1 tablespoon of dark chili powder. This is the dark chili powder, which is totally different than your standard chili powder. Way less garlic, cumin, oregano, and a lot more dark chilies like anchos and mulattoes. Garam masala. This is my little hack. Not only are you going to get some cumin and coriander, but this is where you're going to get those subtle aromatic kind of floral spices. It's in a really good granny chorizo, like cinnamon and clove. And then canned chipotle and adobo puree. Literally what I do is I take a can of chipotle and adobo, puree it, and throw it in my fridge, and I like to splash that in a lot of stuff. This is going to kind of replicate this chili paste that a lot of grannies make. So we're going to do a tablespoon of that. Okay. And then we are going to do 1 teaspoon of sherry vinegar. Interestingly enough, one of the only sausages that I've ever noticed that contains vinegar in the recipe. Just a touch gives it a nice little bite. And now what we need to do is mix it. And I've seen a lot of folks, especially grannies, mix the chorizo by hand. That's fine. What I'm going to show you is how we do it in the professional kitchen, and it's how to stabilize an emulsion. So we're going to cold bowl, cold paddle. We're going to fold in our seasoning. I'm going to take a 1/4 cup of ice water. This is what makes the difference between a nice, juicy, well uniformed sausage and then if you've ever had sausage that's kind of crumbly and dries out, when you fry it in the pan, all the fat comes out of it, which is a fucking bummer because you want to eat that fat. Okay, and then we're going to go and we're going to sear this off in a hot skillet to get that nice, delicious browning of the sausage flavor that we wouldn't be able to get if we just dumped it into here. So once all these ingredients go into the same pot and start to stew and cook together, we'll have a great chili, but we do want to develop the flavors individually when it makes the most sense. Now with that being said, if you check this pot out, we've got some really delicious fond. That's that golden brown crust on the bottom. Our mirepoix and our belly fat is translucent. We really just wanted to sweat with some color. Now we're ready to deglaze. So I like to use Kolsch in my chili. It's a really great, crisp German ale, similar to a lager, but it is an ale. So I like the flavor of the yeast of an ale better for cooking. It tends to stand out more, but this isn't super hoppy, so it's not going to get really bitter. And this is a whole 12-ounce can. I'm going to deglaze, if you will. And I'm going to let that beer start to soak into everything and cook down. Check on our chorizo. Ah, yeah, look at that. We're getting good color. Break it up. And as you can see, the fat allows it to not stick, but it's not melting out. It's all going to go in the chili. Speaking of the chili, what else is going in the chili? We're going to do some hominy, all right? That's why I like to call it the Hog and Hominy. Of course, beans. What we're doing is we got some cooked off hominy corn and some yellow-eyed peas. They're nice and fat and creamy. Now, these are from Rancho Gordo, which does a lot of heirloom beans, legumes, and some corn and chilies on a Napa Valley, okay? So we'll soak these overnight and then cook them individually in lightly seasoned salted water and then add them to the chili, okay? You don't want to try to cook your beans or your hominy in the chili because it's hard for things like that to cook in a tomato-based soup, stock, braised, chili, etc. All right. With that being said, because of the tomato-based qualities of this mixture, when you're cooking, you're not going to cook these into complete mush. It's actually the acidic properties in the tomato that we're adding to the chili will allow the pork to break down and get tender while maintaining a good al dente on the beans and the hominy. Okay. So we're going to add the hominy and the beans. I like to do this while there's just still beer in here so that the hominy and the beans start to soak up some of that beer as well. And then this is another good time to season in layers. So we're going to have a little bit of salt. I also really love this hack, the garam masala. There's also some fennel, some cardamom in here. It gives it a really cool, and a whisper of it goes a long way. It gives it that, like, hey, what is that vibe? All right, I'm going to keep this pan going and get some oil in it. Next up, we're going to do the same thing with our diced shoulder. I want to get some browning on that as well. And it's easier to do that separately in a big skillet like this. We're going to season it with salt and pepper. And go right in this ripping hot skillet and get it crispy. Why? Once again, it's really important to drive this home. Nothing is better than the golden brown flavor of roasted or seared meat. A lot of people say caramelized. It's actually a Maillard reaction. It's something happening on a much higher level of temperature to the proteins in the meat, not at a lower temperature to the sugars in the meat. It's probably why human beings fell in love with fire. This flavor, this aroma. You're not going to get that on the pork if you just dump it into here. So you need to get your flavors developed in layers and then stew them all together. That is the key to a dope chili. And look, if you're going to do something as wild as take a perfect food like a chili cheese Frito and you're going to fuck with that and put things on top of it, it's got to be just as perfect and just as good. So, we've got great color here. We also have some great fond we want to steal from the chorizo and the shoulder. So, I'm going to deglaze this time with some of my lacto-fermented Red Hot. That's in the recipe. Y'all can obviously use like Crystal or Texas Pete. It's about a quarter cup. Now let's get everything else in the chili. Ground cumin. Do about 2 tablespoons. Some more of this dark chili powder. About a tablespoon. Another base layer of kosher salt. We'll do another tablespoon for now. And then tomato. This is a jar of tomatoes that we canned up from last year's harvest. A 28 ounce can of tomatoes, crushed preferably, is what you'll use here. Do the hour in stir check. We got a good gentle simmer here. Smells amazing. I think we got an hour left. Our Hog Hominy Chili is tender and succulente, so let's make some Frito pie. Nice and chunky. And y'all, you can go with that snack-sized Frito bag for the kids, but if you're an adult, you should really treat yourself to the mid-sized bag. I mean, how often do you have Frito pie? What is it? It's like 9 ounces, you know, half a pound, a little over half a pound of Fritos. You know, maybe this is the love seat Frito pie. You're going to share this with your special lady or fella. Avocado. Thanks for joining us to celebrate this year's Tour de Cochon LA and for supporting Heritage Breed Hog.
Cheers, y'all.